G'day everyone, Chris Hickson from Daiwa, Australia here. On the lovely Hastings River at the moment, just been wading the flats, chasing a few flatties and brim and bits and pieces. I know I get seen in the boat a lot, but on the times that I don't have all that time to chuck a boat in and get home and wash it, I really do enjoy just grabbing a couple of rods, a backpack and heading out for a walk. So definitely a good way to scratch the itch. Today we're fishing some flats here. Around the corner there's some really big oyster bars, so I thought I'd just come back in and give you the rundown of what I like to take and hopefully some tips that may help you catch some fish if you ever decide to go out and do a similar thing. To start with, the first rod, I've got the 762 MHFS 2023 TD Hyper, 4000 Legalis reel, 20 pound braid, 30 pound leader. That one was because this morning around the corner here I've seen lots of really big flathead sit, and I had that tied to a 6.2 Bait Junkie minnow, which you've probably seen me catch some pretty decent flatties on other videos. I like to have one heavy rod there just for that scenario in case you do encounter or come across some areas that a big fish is going to sit. You never know, if you get to some of the deeper water, say you're going for a walk along a rock wall or something like that and there could be a dewey, it's nice to have that heavier rod there. I tend to take two rods with me when I go for a walk, one in the hand, one down the backpack, and that way you can chop and change without having to compromise too much. The other rod I take is pretty much just the all-rounder. It's the rod that will do anything you'll want to do while you're walking. That's the 702 MLXS TD Hyper 2023, paired with a 2,500, 8 pound braid, 12 pound leader. I've got a little Bait Junkie 3-inch prawn on that one, 1/8 ounce head, perfect for just throwing nearly everything you're going to come across. So flatties, brim, whiting. The big lizards are gonna make it struggle a little bit, especially if you're in country like we're around the corner, hence why I've got the bigger rod. If there's less likely to be fish like that in your area, I'd be swapping out the heavy one for maybe a 3 to 8 if you're going to come across some bigger flathead, or even go back to a 1 to 2 or 2 to 4 if it's summertime, nice and warm and you're going to be coming across a lot of whiting and brim. Lure wise, I also like to keep it quite basic, but I also like to cover as many avenues as you can. So starting off with the lighter gear, especially in the warmer months, you always want to have a little slippery dog, be it the smallest or biggest or whichever one's going to suit what you're doing. Perfect for catching whiting and brim, especially on the mangrove fringes and sand flats in an area like this. Some other stuff we've got in here, I like to take just a tackle tray. Sometimes I will take the deeper box. If I'm specifically targeting the bigger fish, I'll have a box full of the bigger lures, bigger jig heads and bigger gear. But just a standard mid-sized tackle tray with a dozen or so lures in there, I tend to get a little bit carried away. I find the key is to cover as many scenarios as you can, from that small lure in shallow water, jump to the double clutch, tried and tested, be it the 75 or the 95, absolute flatty killer. A couple of 95s in there. I don't tend to take too many of each lure, just a couple of the key colors that have worked before. An underrated one is the Spike and the 44 and the Spike 53. Also a good lure to cover quite a few scenarios. So that's going to catch brim, it's going to catch flatties, you might shank the odd whiting on it. And then yeah, just an assortment of some bigger stuff, 95 Prezos, bigger slippery dogs, and that's sort of all you really need to take in the hard body selection. Then you jump to jig heads. So a few different weights depending on the depth. So if I was on the other side of the river here, I'd carry a few more heavier heads, but being quite shallow here, most of the stuff I'm going to have is pretty light. So from something like a 16th or a 12th in a number 1, you can pair that up with, say, a Risky Critter, perfect for catching flatties and brim. Those things are one of the most underrated finesse flatty baits going, as far as I'm concerned. They're really good. Then you jump up to, say, a 2.0 or a 3.0 in an 1/8 to a 6th quarter. 1, it helps the casting distance. 2, it keeps it on the bottom where the flatties and the dewies are. And 3, if you do go for a walk where it does get a bit deeper, it's not going to get affected by the current so much. Those fellas there, those Bait Junkie jig heads, perfect paired up with the new 3-inch prawn, flatty slayer, 3-inch minnows, always got a couple of packs of them. What I do like to do as well is have, as you can see with the Risky Critters and the prawns, you're not going to go through a lot in a short session. So I tend to take 1 pack, chop and change, and have a couple of mixed packs in there, just in case the watercolor changes or the conditions sort of dictate to it. And then to go back on the big rod, a couple of heavier heads, bigger heads, so like a quarter 8.0 up to a half ounce 8.0 with a 6.2 and then some 4.2s, just in case there is some of those bigger fish around. Leader wise, with the lighter rod, I tend to start at 12. So 12-pound J-Thread X-Link FC. You can afford to go a little bit lighter on this fella chasing flatties because the abrasion resistance is so good. So that lighter rod that I've got there has the 12-pound leader on it. That's going to cover most things. Unless the water's super clear and you're trying to finesse a brim, it's not going to be too detrimental to the fish catching that you're going to experience. Fine for a top water, fine for just your general flatty fishing, fine for your brim fishing. And then as we walk around there and there's a few racks, I could have put on a little risky critter and had a little flick around the baskets and the racks there, and it wouldn't have been too much of an issue. If I jumped to a lighter rod, I'd probably have a spool of 6-pound in the bag. If I was going to the next size up to a 3 to 8, I'd probably jump up to a 20-pound, just for that rasping of the bigger flatties, that fella there. And then on the heavy rod, minimum 30 pound on that thing. Those big flatties are pretty underrated on how hard they can pull, and especially if you're in nasty structure like around there, you want every bit of abrasion resistance you can get. And truth be told, I don't think the flathead mind too much how thick the line is connected to the lure. All packed in Daiwa backpack. These are a good backpack too. One big compartment I can jam heaps of stuff in. A nice little case at the top that's padded, so if I'm doing early morning runs, I can chuck a set of sunnies in there, a spare set of sunnies and change lenses. If I don't take the sunnies, I just jam it full of scissors and snacks. And then the front's good for a few packs of plastics and leader. Easy to get to ones, and then for the bulkier plastics, just a little lure wallet. So all this combined fits in that backpack, and that's probably more than you'll ever need to go for a quick walk. A couple of little things to add. I do like the little wading belt. I don't use it too often, always forget about it, but it's nice to have your pliers and scissors out. There's nothing worse than when you catch a fish and you forgot about it, or you want to change lures and you've got to reach around your backpack in waist deep water and everything's going in the water. Hopefully that helps with anyone that feels like they need to scratch an itch and go for a walk and catch a few flatties and brim. It's a cracking day to do it, so I think we might go and have another go before the wind gets up. Oh, there you are. I got him. I did got him. Yeah, I teased him up with the top water and dragged that over his head and away we go. Wow. Yeah, I wonder if there's another one there with him. Sometimes they're hunting packs.